So you're in a third world country and you want to get rich. Normally this would be impossible because it's a third world country. But there is a special moment in time in some third world countries where it is possible to get rich with relative ease. See, some third world countries go through this rare Goldilocks phase, a phase where they're on the brink of transitioning from a third world country to more of a second world country, and for some maybe even a first world country. During this phase, there's a ton of expansion, growth, money, but more importantly, there's a lot of corruption and bribery that goes along with that expansion, growth, and money. Because remember, it's still a third world country at heart. It happened in Russia in the 90s when the Russian economy became privatized, which gave rise to the Russian oligarchs. It happened in South Korea during the 60s and 70s. Korea just came out of the Korean War, and the government wanted to give cheap loans to Korean businesses to boost the economy, which gave rise to Korea's most powerful families, like Samsung, LG, Hyundai. These families are practically above the law today in Korea. Their power and wealth is insane, and they solidified their power during this Goldilocks phase of Korea. And it also happened in China, with its astronomical rise in the 90s, where magically China's parliament is home to over 100 billionaires. I'm sure they made their money legitimately. So if you find yourself in this unique situation, in a third world country turning into a second world country, if you play your cards right, you can use this opportunity to become one of the most powerful, wealthiest people in your entire country, a true modern day oligarch. But you gotta know exactly how to finesse the system the right way, and this is your guide. Because guess what? This exact scenario has been playing out over the last few decades in a little known country called India. And one man has been using this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to gobble up all of India. His name? Gautam Adani, India's Rockefeller. Adani is the perfect example for you to follow. Adani has skyrocketed into not only one of the most powerful men in India, but at one point he even surpassed Bezos as the second richest person in the world. On the outside, it looks like he's this incredible business genius, that everything he touches turns to gold. But you and I know different. You and I know that although Gautam Adani is very good at business, his empire is built on corruption, bribery, being in bed with India's prime minister, an insane amount of debts, and a whole lot of mysterious disappearances and deaths, at least according to one anonymous person online for what that's worth. And this is how you can do the same. One of Adani's most valuable assets on his climb to the top is also his most mysterious, a multi-million-dollar art collection never seen by the public. See, collecting art isn't just a hobby for Adani. He's just following in the footsteps of the biggest banks and institutions in the world. Because right now, all of them are quietly investing 30 to 50% of their portfolios into alternative assets. One of those alternative assets is fine art, as stated by Goldman Sachs. Money managers say demand for art is skyrocketing right now because investors are racing in, especially with a typical portfolio already down 20% for the year. Now you may be asking yourself, but how am I supposed to afford a Picasso or something like that? Well, that is where our channel partner Masterworks comes in. Masterworks is a platform that allows anyone to invest in high-end art from legends like Picasso and Banksy for a fraction of the full cost. Instead of buying a piece on your own, they break the ownership of a work of art into shares, removing the high barrier to entry so you can buy and sell shares of fine art. And because people are rushing into fine art, Masterworks has been seeing more demand than ever, and it's been paying off huge for Masterworks investors. To date, they've sold 6 paintings from their collection for an average net return of 29%. To put into context how amazing that is, they sold a painting in August for a 33.1% net return, even as the S&P was down 17% for the year. They've done so well that there's actually a waitlist to join Masterworks, but you can click the link below for priority access. So pause the video and click the link below to get priority access to Masterworks before it's too late.
Step 1 is getting your feet wet. Because if you're gonna become the most powerful oligarch in your country, even with all the corruption and favors, you're still gonna need to be really good at business. So start a business. You can start small, and once you've learned the basics, you can move on to more advanced topics like how to import goods without authorization from the government, or how to skip out on paying taxes. You know, the kind of stuff you would learn in business school. Once you're pretty well versed, you're gonna have to get a little more intentional on how you expand. You gotta take a page out of the great tycoons before you, like Carnegie and Rockefeller, where your goal is not to just own one business, but own the whole entire chain. Remember, you're still in a second-rate country. This isn't America where there are anti-monopoly laws. You're free to gobble it all up like the robber barons of industrial America. And this is exactly how Adani began his upward climb to the top of India's economy. It started in the late 70s when his brother Vinod just opened a plastics factory and asked Adani if he would move back to his hometown to help him run it. Adani reluctantly agreed, and when he got there, he wasn't impressed. The profit margins were way too low and he knew they could be making a lot more cash. And because Adani grew up in a big family with not enough food to go around, he always seemed to have this insatiable thirst for money. So, he started to look for loopholes in the system to see what he could get away with. He came to learn one of the benefits of being in a country like this. One day, instead of paying the government fees to import the bulk PVC granules they needed for the factory, Adani partnered with a business who was already approved by the government and imported what he needed through their system at a fraction of the cost. Pretty cool. The world of business started to feel like a game he could win at. So he started entering every vital sector of India's growing economy. Power plants, mines, he even opened up his own network of private ports under the name of Adani Enterprises Limited, so he can make money off of his own imports and exports, as well as the imports and exports of all the other businesses in India. He also opened this chain of businesses at the perfect time in Indian history, when tariffs on imports were lowered and the control of the government over Indian businesses had loosened exponentially. This was the moment his childhood self had been waiting for. It's the dawn of capitalism, and he's in the perfect position to become the richest man India has ever seen.
The leadership of one man has made all difference. Shri Narendra Modi.
Step 2. Get in bed with those in power. Taking advantage of little loopholes can only get you so far. What you need to do now is get on the good side of the guys who make the rules. So if you ever need to, open a coal mine that ends up polluting the water supply of an entire village, or clear 3,000 hectares of preserved land to build your factory on it, you can do it without anyone from the government giving you a hard time. Sure, you can get in bed with lower level government officials, but why not go big or go home? Aim for the Prime Minister. But don't go for the Prime Minister that's already in office. He's guaranteed to already have a bunch of people asking him for stuff every day, so it'll be harder to build a solid relationship. Instead, look for an ambitious politician who is aiming to become Prime Minister. That will be much easier, and he'll be easier to bribe. This is why it's so important to already have a decent little business empire going on by this point. You've got to have some resources at your disposal and a track record to show for it. And once you get his attention, tell him about some interesting business deals that will enrich not just you, but him. Paint a picture of all the riches you're going to share with him, how you'll fund his campaign, help him get into office, and how all he needs to do is, once he gets into office, tweak some legislation here and there to favor your business, pass all the most lucrative government contracts to you, and maybe look the other way once in a while when problems pop up. If you come off confident and competent, if you sound like you have 100% conviction in what you're saying, like you know how the system works, maybe slip some cash into his pocket in the process to tease him of what's to come, he'll probably say yes. There's just simply too much money staring at him in the face for any mortal to say no. And when Adani met Narendra Modi, the future Prime Minister of India, it was a match made in heaven. Adani did everything imaginable to make sure he became Modi's #1 man, like offering to fund Modi's electoral campaign. So once Modi was elected Prime Minister in 2014, Modi gave Adani all the preferential treatment. Modi gave him ownership of 6 major airports in India, even though he had no experience in aviation. He fully supported Adani's coal mining venture. Modi even sold him state-owned land priced at only 1 cent per square meter, so he could rent it back to Indian citizens for $11. It's no wonder that ever since Modi came into office, Adani's personal net worth has multiplied by 230%, and his business, it has expanded 12-fold. In return, Adani continues to give his friend in power unconditional support. He defends him publicly whenever his leadership is being questioned, he accompanies him on state visits, and he even gave the Prime Minister his own fleet of Adani brand private jets. But this is just the beginning. Once you have the Prime Minister in your pocket, it's time to pour gasoline on the fire. It's fair to assume that your guy in power isn't gonna stay in power forever. Sometimes rulers of countries like this do stay in power for a really long time, like the royal family of Sri Lanka, but it's not always guaranteed. These countries are on a tightrope, so you want to expand and gobble up as much of the economy as fast as you can. The problem is, you're definitely not going to have enough savings to expand at this scale. But worry not, because that is where the magic of debt comes in. Borrowing money to buy up more of the economy. The problem is, borrowing money in third or second world countries can be kinda tricky. But not when you're friends with the Prime Minister. Get your Prime Minister to convince these lending institutions to lend you as much money as you want. While competitors are trying to get a few measly loans here and there through regular channels, lenders will be throwing more loans at you than you can spend. Here's a graph of all the $30 billion worth of debt Adani has used to fuel his astronomical rise. Having the Prime Minister in your pocket can only take you so far. There are a lot of people in the government. The Prime Minister can't corral all of them to support you. No. So, you've got all the money you need to expand. Now you just need to make sure you bribe the rest of the government officials. You gotta make sure that no one is gonna get in your way. Not the police, not the Port Authority, no one. For example, want to extract more coal than what's normally allowed due to risk of air pollution? Simply make some donations to the government officials in charge of these restrictions, and they'll be magically taken care of. Want to open a mine in a sleepy fishing village, but don't want to go through the authorization process? Pay the port authorities, police, and customs to stay quiet about it, and you're golden.
Finest documentation of corruption in this country that independent India has ever seen. There are pages after pages of documentation of how Adani Enterprises was involved in letting miners illegally export thousands and thousands of tons of iron ore from India abroad. And there are detailed documentation and tabulation of bribes paid at various levels and how it was all manipulated.
Recently, Adani bribed the Indian government with very generous donations so Modi can make a new rule in his favor. Modi mandated that coal companies in India must use 10% imported coal, which is around 10 times more expensive than locally mined Indian coal, even though there is no shortage. Who owns all the ports? Adani. So now, who makes a ton of money importing coal? Adani. And when Adani wanted to open an iron mine in Belakari, a quaint village on the west coast of India, he wanted to make sure he could extract every last scrap of iron out of his mine. But he didn't want to be restricted by any kind of annoying environmental regulations or laws on how much iron he can extract and export. So, he bribed the police, the port authorities, customs authorities, and politicians so everyone would just shut their mouths and let him mine his iron in peace.
According to the report, records seized from the Belakari office of Adani Enterprises show that it systematically bribed a host of regulators, public officials, and politicians. The Ombudsman's report detailed the corrupt payments. Money has been regularly paid to port authorities, customs authorities, the police department, mines and geology, and even to MLAs and MPs. All these payments were not shown in the balance sheet of the company, unaccounted and paid in cash.
And why has he gotten away with this for so long? Because even if someone rats him out, he's protected. That's the power of having the man in office behind your back. Now for the fun part. Siphoning money out of your company into your own pocket. See, money in your giant conglomerate isn't actually yours. You have investors, other people that own a part of your company and therefore own a part of the profits in your company. That is no fun. So you gotta move as much of that cash into your own personal piggy bank as possible. And you gotta do it without any shareholders noticing. And the way you do that is with secrecy havens. You may have heard about secrecy havens from previous videos on this channel. But in a nutshell, secrecy havens are places where they respect the privacy of wealthy clients such as yourself, allowing you to create shell companies that you control but aren't tied to you. They act like anonymous bank accounts that can't be traced back to you. Kinda like an anonymous crypto wallet, if you want to think about it that way. So set up shell companies in these havens, one in the Cayman Islands, one in Mauritius, and one in Singapore. It's always good to diversify. Make your brother the CEO of these companies so it's not obvious you're the one behind all of this. And oh, just to be safe, you're also going to get him to legally change his last name from Adani to Shah, just to make sure no one can connect the dots. Now that you have your offshore empire set up, you just got to make sure that the companies who buy your coal and stuff send the payment to these shell companies in these tax havens, and not the Adani Group companies in India. That way, this money never touches your hands on paper, but it's still under your control. By doing this, you give the Indian people the illusion that their economy is growing, without giving any financial benefit to them, besides the people you directly employ. And your shareholders, they're getting played too, because all the real money is going directly into your pocket through your shell companies instead of the Adani Group. Remember, we want control over this money, not ownership. Who cares if it's your brother that owns the shell company on paper? That's the point. You're the brother in charge. Between you and him, you obviously have the final say in how this money gets used. As long as you can spend the money as if it's your own, that's all that matters. A recent report came out showing that 13 out of the 26 Adani subsidiaries in Australia are registered in the Cayman Islands. And in 2016, Adani was accused of siphoning money out of his company into an offshore account in Mauritius, another tax haven. According to a report filed by the DRI, the Adani Group bought over $100 million worth of electrical equipment from a company in Dubai. But when you follow the paper trail, this Dubai company turned out to be owned by a series of shell companies that led right back to a trust owned by, who do you know? Adani's brother. But instead of paying the actual price, he paid about 400% more for the goods. So in effect, Adani was allegedly funneling money out of the Adani Group into his own pocket via an offshore account.
They appear to be crooks. From all this evidence that the Department of Revenue Intelligence has unearthed, they clearly appear to be crooks.
Unprecedented, the way in which
one of the really cool things about being a de facto oligarch is that if pesky journalists start bashing you, all you need to do is buy out the TV and media channels where they're bashing you, and then change the narrative. For Adani, his target was NDTV, one of India's most beloved alternative news sources. Adani really didn't like how they portrayed him, so he did some research and found out that the owners of NDTV had to take out a loan years ago from a company called VCPL in order to keep a majority stake in their news station and maintain their journalistic integrity. Adani also discovered that they never paid back the loan. That loan represented 29.18% of the ownership in the company. So he quickly acquired VCPL and converted the loan into that 29.18 stake position. Now, he owns almost 1/3 of NDTV. The owners of NDTV never saw it coming. Go Adani. And when Adani couldn't get enough control of the media through actually buying up news platforms, he sued investigative journalists like Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, who wrote about Adani Group's many scandals for the Economic Times and The Wire. And when Paranjoy couldn't pay up, he just forced him to resign. It's okay. Nobody needs that kind of noise anyway.
Gautam Adani, an Indian businessman who made his fortune in shipping and coal production, has officially become the world's second richest person. Yeah.
So, he did it. Adani became the richest man India has ever seen. But there's one little detail, one little string that's been pulling at him ever since he set up that chain of businesses back in the mid-80s. Because he owns every rung of the ladder. If too many rungs fall off, the whole structure collapses, and these days, his chain of businesses is starting to weaken. India is running out of coal. And what good are coal power plants and coal ports without a healthy source of, well, coal? This is why he's approached Australia, home of the largest coal deposits in the world, for permission to dig a mine near Queensland, near a coal port called Abbott Point that he conveniently already happens to own. See, this is the problem with owning the whole chain. The raw materials you need to make the whole system run could disappear one day. But he will not let this structure, this house of cards, fall. So he does the same old routine. He sends a very generous donation to the Australian government, bribes all the right people, and gets all the pro-coal lobbyists to convince the parliament on his behalf. Today, if you look at Adani's empire, it's looking more like a house of cards. A house of cards built upon a giant heap of debt. But who knows? A man this powerful, with this many people in his pocket, might be able to keep it all from collapsing. And even if it does, you can bet that he's already got enough set aside offshore so that he's set for life. Adani's mines have caused immense damage both to the environment and the health of the Indian people. The dust from Adani's coal mine in Goa, India, is causing breathing problems in children who live nearby. And local doctors are claiming that there's been an influx of respiratory disorders in their patients ever since it opened. But this is nothing new. Plenty of companies have done irreparable damage to the environment. And one of those companies is Monsanto, who sprayed a highly toxic chemical called Agent Orange over Vietnam during the Vietnam War. To this very day, children born within the family line of the Agent Orange victims have irreversible birth defects. But that was far from the only evil thing Monsanto has done. They've had a long history of experimenting with chemicals, and their own employees have felt the effects. They're also the company that kinda owns the world's food supply through their genetically modified seeds. But this stuff gets dark. Like a little too dark to be posted publicly on YouTube without getting demonetized. This is why we decided to release a private, uncensored, full-length documentary on Monsanto only available to members of this channel. All you have to do to get instant access to Monsanto, the company that owns the world's food supply, and tons of other secret docs that are just too dark to post publicly, is to click the join button below. And unlike university, we are not going to charge you thousands of dollars only to leave you in the dark about how the world really works. All it takes is $5 a month to learn about what they'll never teach you in school. And there's a refund policy too, unlike most YouTube memberships. So if you're not happy with the membership, just email us within your first month of joining and we will refund your $5 right away, no questions asked. After your first month, there is no refund. Scroll down and click that join button below now. You won't regret it.
I personally love making these videos on, how to get rich in third world countries because it shows really how gray the world is and how there's really no rules. And if you really wanted to, you can find your way around every single rule out there. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, we make documentaries just like this one every single week on money, power, war, and crime so that you can learn how the world really works instead of becoming a victim to it. So if you like that philosophy, if you want to be more dangerous, click that subscribe button below. You can follow me on Instagram at Tran, but that is going to wrap it up. Thanks for being part of the Watch to the End Club. Stay dangerous out there, and I will see you guys in the next one.